As the pumpkin-suited sack boys and blood dripping down the walls have probably already told you, we take Halloween very seriously here at FirstPlay. And as part of our ungodly celebrations, we decided to ask the team a question. What's your scariest ever gaming moment?
Dead Space, absolutely terrifying. You know, there's that awful moment where you're creeping around the corner on the way back to the control room and suddenly, bosh, out comes the snake monster to grab you by the heels, pull you, drag you along the floor. You have to whip out your plasma cutter and try and blast it in its yellow glowing nether regions.
You've just seen the Necromorphs for the first time, they chase you down a corridor, you don't really get a chance to have a look at them, and then you get into the lift. One bursts through the doors of the lift and you get your first close-up look at one in the flesh.
Silent Hill 2 for me, the idea of being in a town covered with fog and full of mystery, and there's noises when you go into corners, the whole thing's super unsettling, and then when the world goes nightmarish and you meet Pyramid Head.
And you go into a room and you see him in there and you hide in a cupboard and you sort of peek through the gaps in the cupboard and you can see him getting a little bit frisky with one of the mannequin women. And there's just this sort of morass of writhing, slick limbs and sort of indistinguishable bodies and things, and it's just really, really horrible to the point that you just want to turn it off and do something nice.
It's a heavy rain for me. You've been playing as Madison Page for a couple of hours, so you already know what she's about. You get to this doctor's house and he offers you this drink of what I presume to be delicious cordial, but actually turned out to be sleeping juice. And the next thing you know, you wake up on this weird kind of doctor's surgery table. He's standing over you with a scalpel. Just as he's about to cut into you, luckily the doorbell rings and he has to go off, and that's the point that you kind of start looking around your surroundings and try to find a way out. You've got to go through this like 100-button sequence to escape your restraints and finally find a way to eventually kind of turn off him and get out of there.
Siren Blood Curse, the remake for PS3. Right at the beginning of the game, this police car comes up, this policeman comes out, you realise that he's evil for some reason, you've got nowhere to run, or so it seems. You sort of pitch headfirst into the bushes. It's just, the scary thing about it is it isn't signalled. There's not like a light going, come over here, you'll be safe. The image of this policeman walking towards me is still the scariest image I've got from games.
Uncharted 1, you know, you're living out this incredible Indiana Jones gaming fantasy, and suddenly, down the darkened corridor, you see this little flash of white scuttling across in front of you.
What was that?
It's such an unnerving moment, and for the rest of the game, you're just thinking, when is this thing going to come and get me? Just like in The Descent.
Anything from the Project Zero series of games, there was a real otherworldliness to them because they were sort of set with, you know, small Japanese schoolgirls in weird haunted woods. But the really scary part was, instead of having sort of any weapons to fight off the various ghosts, you had to use a camera, which meant waiting for the precise moment when the ghost was in the right frame at the right time. It really was sort of a real test of courage to just sit there waiting for it to get close enough.
Manhunt in itself is a scary enough game, but the circumstances in which I played it certainly didn't help. I was completely alone in my house, and it was about 2 AM, so I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll play this with all the lights off and no one else around. And obviously the beginning section is very atmospheric and dark. I could barely get through the first hour or so because every time anything moved or anyone came out of the shadows, I would jump and got rather pathetically terrified. Obviously eased into it soon enough after I got all my murderous tools and started strangling people with plastic bags, but I'd say that's still one of the scariest PlayStation moments for me, definitely, mainly because I played it like an idiot.
There's a lovely moment in Red Dead Redemption, actually several moments, where as part of a series of side missions you come across this mysterious stranger.
Tell me your damn name and where you know me from.
Well, I know you're from Mexico, I know you're from back out west, I know you from all over.
He gives you a series of kind of tasks to complete which are kind of like morally related. You can either do good or bad, and each time he ominously sort of judges, but you're never quite sure how you've got on, and there's a real sense that this might be the devil you're speaking to, or perhaps an angel. And it's a beautifully kind of sinister moment in an otherwise kind of quite straight take on the Western genre.
Damn you!
Yes, many have.
One of the scariest moments I've ever had in a game was in Resident Evil 2, sort of walking down a very narrow corridor and the windows are all boarded up. And you sort of walk past them a little bit hesitantly thinking that something horrible is going to happen. And quite cleverly, nothing happens at all. And you go upstairs and do a whole load of sort of bland, puzzly things, and you fought zombies along the way. And then on the way back down, it does this, the thing you get in games where you just assume if you've cleared a corridor that nothing bad's going to happen there, you're safe to run right through, and you've almost forgotten about the first time you went past there. And you sort of go banging past them, and as you do, all these zombified hands come out and start grasping you, and it's just a really clever way of just making you even more nervous than you were before. It's a brilliant thing.
In COD Zombies, we had a very tight team, and we worked Nacht der Untoten, the first level, ruthlessly, practiced it constantly. We had our windows, we had our weapons, we had our breaks, we went to the certain areas at certain times. We had it down so tight that we could ride the zombie wave for ages. And then thinking we'd got it all sussed, we moved on to the second level on one of the DLC packs, which introduces these kind of zombie hell wolves that teleport in a bolt of lightning. And all our planning, all our teamwork, everything that we sort of worked so tightly to knit together just went to pieces as soon as this 9-foot wolf appears in the middle of your room. More terrifying than any of the hundreds of zombies we'd shot before.
I love horror in itself, but it's just something about seeing it on the screen that I really don't like. But I did make an exception for Silent Hill 3. Sat down, started playing this, thought this actually looks really quite good. And then got to the point where I was walking down the corridor quite early in the game, and this weird fleshy thing starts running at me. And I thought, right, okay, I'll get my weapon out. I'm trying to bash this fleshy thing with this useless implement, and it's just gnawing at my ankles. And then at that point I just thought, this is too weird for me, and just gave up, went to make a cup of tea and played something far less scary.
Thanks all. Well, that was uncomfortably like being in group therapy with a bunch of emotionally stunted adolescents. Except that mysterious girl with the fringe. Didn't you think she was amazing? Yes, you did. Shh, you did.
What are they doing? I thought this was an abandoned village. Who are those people?